You're all in the same, you're all in the right spot, right? Anime opening formula, it's not one of the like fun panels across the way or anything? Okay, excellent. So, some people like Uraraka. Some people like Tsuyu. Some people just like trash. I don't know why. And some people like, just me. I really like analyzing music. As a music history major, I've looked at a lot about music in context through different ages, in different places, in different settings, and anime is no exception. Music follows a formula, regardless of what age you're in, and I want to go over each of those steps in this talk. So I want to start with the introduction, go into the exposition, look into the development, right into the main theme, and then ultimately bring it full circle into the resolution. So let's just get right into it. That's me. So the introduction is where we really get a spotlight into what the world we're looking at is. So whether it's jumping towards your dreams, building towards your dreams, making characters, looking up towards your dreams, trying to become All Might, or living the dream, being a lazy little sister. Either way, we're looking at what the world is going to be in a few small seconds in the beginning of the introduction. And in this way, it's really the difference between you being hooked and going on into watching the full thing, or closing your window and looking at the next anime in the season. The introduction is broken up into two parts. Actually, a lot of my things are broken up into two parts. The first part of the introduction is kind of this initial hook, where we get to see an intense focus on the main character and what they're looking for. Musically, we're looking at just a very simple acoustic on the top line, some vocals, and some minimal harmony on the bottom, usually not even a rhythm section. This simplistic music helps create a focus onto the main character and these visuals, which are sometimes abstract and very kind of intimate and endearing. And in the second part, we get to see kind of what I call the shock. The shock is where the full instrumentals come in. We get to see the rhythm section, we get to see the bass and the guitars. And with this, then we get kind of this energy. Think of this entire presentation kind of as a roller coaster. So in the first part, in the introduction, we're getting a little bit of a build, and when we get into that shock, we get a little bit of a nice little dip, which is fun. And in the dip, in the shock, we also get to see the title flash across the screen, and we get to see a little bit, maybe of a larger setting, a bird's eye view of what the world looks like. So for this first one, I'm going to be playing the opening from Gintama, and let's take a look at the two elements that I looked at. Kind of the first one where we're looking at the main characters, and the second one where we get to see the high energy from the music as well as the title screen. 理想だけを口にしてた過去壁はどこにだって立ちふさいでって探りで生きてく Great, so that's the introduction. Short and sweet, nice and simple, only a couple seconds long. And then we move into the exposition. So the exposition here is very similar in form to the introduction. The beginning is a very slow, kind of easy melodic sequence that we get to see. There usually is a little bit of a beat so that we feel like we're driving forward, somewhere we're driving toward the main theme. And also, we get to see more of the main characters, but instead of having a more abstract one, like in the introduction, we get to see them a little bit more in context, whether we get to see them drawing manga, looking through a gate, a dog that's very happy, or brushing your teeth with your goddess, or something else entirely. We get to see something that's relevant and in setting. And the second part of the introduction is kind of the reiteration. So it sounds very similar to this first part, but we get to pick up a little bit in rhythm. So we're continuing with the roller coaster. We went down the dip from the introduction, and now we're kind of building up again. And we get a little bit more energy in this part of the exposition just because it's a little bit longer. So we get a little bit more time to experiment and to build up that energy. But it's ultimately going to fall short of the main theme when it's going to be interrupted by the development. Let's take a look at this opening sequence from the regular Magic High School. We'll get an intense focus on Tatsuya and Miyuki kind of in context in a nice setting where they get to be intimate and by themselves. And then the second iteration is kind of more what I'm talking about when Erika and Leo are introduced. There we get to see Leo running, doing his kind of fitness regimen, and Erika in a dojo practicing kendo. And from there we get to see a little bit more about who they are and less in an abstract setting. 静かにそ And then now, we're going up a hill. We think it might be the main theme, but not yet. We need to dive really far down into the development. The development section is where we get to see the main characters struggle, whether they're struggling against an antagonist, whether they're struggling against society, or whether they're struggling against themselves. This section really gets to show the character kind of reflect and show where the action is going to be this season, what they're going to be doing. And this often is portrayed both musically and visually through a darker tone. So musically, a darker tone, I mean it's going to change usually into a minor key. This minor key will sound kind of sad and dark, and oftentimes we'll bring the pitch down to show that we're in a different place, in a much different place than when we were in the introduction and in the exposition. And from a visual perspective, obviously, there's a lot darker background. If you can look at some of the pictures up there, we get to see, the villains portrayed, or maybe if you have a dark past, like in the Grimoire of Zero on the bottom left. We get to see a lot more of the introspection that we get to see as far as the action is concerned. And this part ultimately is the first part of the development, and in the second part, we get to see the build. This is in the roller coaster where you get to go on the very, very high rise, all the way to the top before we get to go on the fun dive into the main theme. So in that build, we go out of the minor key that we were in before, and it gives us a little bit of hope, and it builds up energy with the rhythm section as far as drums, percussion are concerned, but also with some added guitar and bass as well, and that'll lead us into the main theme. Let's take a look. Right here. And the whole build comes up from the darkness and goes into the main theme. So now we've arrived. Here's the main theme. The main theme is what we've all been waiting for. After the build, from the introduction, now we're at the part where the action happens. Whether it's a fight scene, another fight scene, or fall somewhere. The main theme is really what shows what's going to be happening this season, why you're here to watch the anime. It doesn't obviously have to be an action scene. It could be lots of character development. It could be cooking together. Anything is where that main theme is going to be attracted to. So the things that define the main theme, the first part is going to be obviously a lot of movement. There's going to be a lot of action scenes if there's fighting, or if there's cooking things from Shokugeki, there's going to be knives moving, food being tossed around, and everything. This is kind of where the animation budget goes. And from a musical perspective, we get kind of two options for the most part. The first one is that we can reintroduce the theme from the beginning of the song into the main theme with the instrumentals underneath. This kind of helps bring stuff back full circle and continue that energy that we initially saw in the introduction. The second way is for them to compose a completely new theme and leave the introduction theme for later in the song to bring it together in the resolution. Let's take a look at the first example in Haikyuu, opening 4. So here's the introduction theme. And then, keep that melody in your head. Here is the main theme. So in this way, by looping the introduction theme into the main theme, it kind of continues the energy that was initially there in the start. And it brings it back full circle, kind of continuing the scene from when he's jumping up all the way into the rally that they have with Alba Josai. And the second way, obviously, is to have an original theme. This next clip here from My Hero Academia opening 2 has a really great visual composition with the action, similar to the Haikyuu opening, where they're volleying back and forth. You have a lot of introduction of side characters as well, getting together in the tournament arc, and creating just a lot of energy action, which kind of brings it back full circle to the resolution with a new theme. Let's take a look. a darker composition with the shadow falling here, and then we're leading up to the main theme. Okay. So yeah, obviously there's a lot of lots of action, and there's, in contrast to kind of the slower sections in the beginning with the exposition and the development, where there's an intense focus on some of the characters, the main theme introduces a lot of different characters and creates an energy, but ultimately the focus gets expanded a little bit and lost. So when we go to the resolution, we help bring that all together. So for the resolution, we get to see that energy that's expanding. We've kind of gone down the roller coaster on the fun part, done some loops, and we're bringing it back into the station, bringing it back into the beginning. And this part is for refocusing back on, you know, kind of what the main focus of the anime is and kind of what's important. But really, we're bringing it all together. And in this part, whether you know, there was an action scene, and then now we need to come back and focus in on the main characters, or, well, okay, so usually there's two scenarios for this part on the resolution. Either we focused a lot on the main characters, and we kind of left out the supporting characters and need to add them in, or we have a lot of support on the focus on the supporting characters, and we need to bring the focus back in onto the main character. In both cases, we kind of get a contrast that helps balance out the rest of what the opening was, and then bring it back into the conclusion. Let's take a look at My Hero Academia opening 3, and this will help flash all of the supporting characters that might have been left out for some parts of the other. That's the opening. So the opening goes through those 5 phases, whether or not it's an action anime or whether or not it's a slice of life, it's shoujo. You'll find that this formula remains constant regardless of the genre. So that's what the opening sequence looks like on a standard basis. But how do anime openings differentiate themselves from each other? How do we get something that's more unique or something that kind of sticks out from the crowd? A couple of ones. Like I said before, in the beginning of the anime, it's usually very mellow. But in Restaurant to Another World, they kind of differentiate themselves by changing up the rhythm, by changing up the beat. They go into double time. So instead of sticking at a constant tempo throughout the whole song, they make a double tempo. Let's take a look. Oh, uh-oh, it's not playing. Please. Nope. OK, take my word for it. They go into a double tempo. By changing up the rhythm, it changes the intensity of the song. It brings up another energy level, and it gets them to have a little bit more freedom as far as how the pace of the song goes. They can make it a lot faster, or they can drag out some parts since they're going in double time. In this one from Recreators, instead of building up, going up the roller coaster for the development section, in the development, they decide to take out the energy. So it starts at a higher energy volume, and it goes down slowly. Let's see. Does it play? Nope. OK. So for Recreators, instead of creating more energy by adding it, so see, it starts off loud, and now we're taking out instruments as we go. So in order to bring out that contrast, instead of doing a build up to the main theme, they took out instrumentation to make sure that they could drop the energy level and kind of do a shock similar to the introduction. And there's these and many other types of ways to differentiate yourselves, whether it's using the voice actresses, changing up the time, changing up the tempo. All of these things help create a unique experience for everyone. But ultimately, the anime opening creates this roller coaster ride, this fun experience for you to get a glimpse into the anime. So that's it. Thank you so much for coming out, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.